Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, welcome to Chichester Festival Theatre. My name is Kate Mosse. I'm a novelist and a writer and a Chichester person, born and bred. And it's my enormous pleasure to be doing the first interview of the 2017 year here at CFT. I have the brilliant Michael Morpurgo here, and I think he should have his own round of applause before we start.
Cheers.
Now, many of you will know that Running Wild, the production that some of you might have seen this afternoon and some of you might be going in this evening or sometime over the next week, started as a CFYT, a youth theatre production at the Cass Sculpture Foundation. This then went to Regent's Park Theatre in London, and the youth theatre director, Dale Rooks, and Timothy Sheeder, the artistic director of Regent's Park, worked there, and now this is a new reworked version that is going on tour. This is the beginning of the tour, and they will be on tour for about 6 months. It will finish in Wolverhampton in June, and next week it's going to Coventry. But it's an enormous pleasure for CFT to have the tour start here where it began. And there are 3 CFYT members, former members, who are making their professional debuts in the show, and that is also a wonderful thing to do. So, Michael, the story is, so far as I've understood, inspired by something you read or a real event. Is that where the story of Running Wild started, that you saw about the tsunami in 2004 and wanted to write about it, or is it a different way in? Tell us a bit how it started.
Well, I think like all stories, with every writer, it starts much earlier. There's some little seed corn sown. And for me, the seed corn was my mother reading a book called The Just So Stories to me when I was a little thing. And my favourite story of all was The Elephant's Child. She was an actor. She read beautifully. And so I loved listening to her. And anyway, I loved her. And I think it's one of those things that the way of communicating between a mother and a child when mother is busy and there isn't much time to communicate one-to-one. But there were precious moments. And I associate that elephant with those moments. And I can't read that book now without hearing her voice in my head. That story stayed in my head. And then when I got older and I read for myself another book by Kipling, The Jungle Book, I always had it in my head that it would be wonderful to write a story about an elephant and a jungle. And possibly with a tiger, because I like William Blake. So I thought to myself, don't do it, because Kipling was really rather good. And everyone knows the Jungle Book anyway, and leave it alone. So for years, I never wrote a story about an elephant, I never wrote a story about a jungle, and then...
But did it stay lurking in you?
It lurked. And I kept in a way yearning to do it, I think, and reading lots of stories about wild children. I did that a lot of research into wild children, how they lived, discovered ones in France and in Russia, and fascinating stories. And of course, as I was growing older myself, realizing that our connection with nature was so important and so threatened and all that. So bit by bit, I guess, the seed was growing, but then the tsunami of, what was it, 2004, wasn't it? Came in, and as we may remember, the youngsters of you here may not know this, but in 2004 there was this huge wave that came in, and it killed over 300,000 people in Indonesia and Sri Lanka and places like that. And the newspapers and television, of course, were just full of it, and it was even more depressing than Donald Trump. I mean, truly, truly awful, because this was, you knew you were witnessing the most terrible suffering. People were doing what they could, but the thing was too sudden. And anyway, I did happen to go to Sri Lanka, and I saw a place where the wave had come in, and I thought, I can't write about it, it's too hard, it's too difficult. And then I read in a newspaper, most wonderful story, about an English family on holiday, I think it was in Indonesia, in Boxing Day 2004. And I read this, and it was the only positive story, the only story that made you think, oh, thank goodness for that. There was something, there's something. And it was about a family holidaying there, and the son, was on an elephant going down the beach having the equivalent of a donkey ride at Weston-super-Mare, but out there. And The elephant noticed that something was weird, wrong, started trumpeting, trying to break away, noticed what no one had noticed, which was that the sea was retreating into itself. And then the most tragic thing that I read of all was that the kids, most of whom were fishermen's children, rushed out onto the sand, which was being exposed now, and picked up the fish, all these flapping fish. They just thought, it's wonderful, manna from heaven. And then, of course, the wave came in, by which time the elephant, with a boy on his back, charged up into this forest and saved the boy's life. I thought that was wonderful. And I thought, well, actually, now I can write a story. I can write my Jungle Book without it being antique, which was important. I could write it about a rainforest of today, with all that means today. So I thought, well, no, and you can have your elephant.
At last.
And a tiger. And I just thought, no, do it. And that would be, anyway, a good way of remembering those dreadful days and that dreadful moment. So I sat down and wrote it. And then they made this play, as you just said. And the most bizarre thing happened, it was truly, truly bizarre, is that I think the Chichester Theatre, after I'd done some radio program about it, got a phone call from this lady who said, I don't want to make a fuss, but Michael Morpurgo is telling a lie about there being a boy on this elephant. It was a girl, and it was me.
No.
Yes.
That's amazing.
It was wonderful.
Yes.
And so she came to the show in Regent's Park with her family, and she sat there, aged 20-something, and watched herself running around.
Was that intimidating, knowing that this was a real person? Because we make stuff up.
We do
and it's
make stuff
normally
up.
just us.
This nearly came to whack me, when it really did. Yeah. No, I think she was enchanted. Mind you, we gave her a good supper beforehand.
Of course, always sensible.
No, she was lovely. She lives in Hertfordshire, which is where I come from, and she has a regular, normal life now, but this extraordinary thing did happen to her. And her stepfather at the time, as a way, I think, to reward the handler, paid for the elephant's keep for the rest of its life. Right. So, anyway, it was a wonderful moment and a full circle. I love full circles, and I also like it when we get caught out.
Yes, and also that sense of wanting to find hope in a terrible story, and actually this was the real hope. In terms of, you write wonderful children characters. You obviously write beautiful and amazing animals. Was it a weird thing, then, to have your boy, as it had been in Chichester and then at Regent's Park, Will, becoming Lily? You keep the jokes and she's there. Did that change how you felt about the character as a writer? Or did you feel that it belonged to the directors and the actors anyway?
I do feel that if you hand over a story to a theatre company or a film company, you have to make up your mind, when you do the handing over, are these people good at what they do? Well, Chichester has this supreme record, really, reputation, for making not just youth theatre, but for the last 30 years, wonderful youth theatre with Dale. And I'd heard about this, knew about this. I know Chichester of old, because on the stage I'm standing on now, sitting on now, my daddy actually acted here. So I'm very affectionate towards Chichester. And
you were at school nearby, weren't you?
No, I wasn't at school. I taught at a school just on the road.
Oh, you taught at Great Ballard, yeah.
Really, yeah, I taught at Great Ballard, which was strange. And and that was quite fun. But I also, Chichester, I remember fondly because I failed my driving test here.
Many of us have that shame to our record.
But it was market day, so it wasn't my fault.
And it was the Oving traffic lights, ladies and gentlemen.
Anyway, so I had a good reason to say yes to Chichester, but I do think, seriously, that if you say yes to a theatre company, to a director, to a producer, you have to be sure before you do it, as sure as you can, but these people make good work. And frankly, you make misjudgments sometimes. You get lucky, you get unlucky. And I have found that the productions which have enchanted me most are the ones where the theatre has taken the greatest risk. And Dale was saying she was going to do this outdoors in some forest outside Chichester. Well, I didn't realise there were a lot of forests around Chichester, but she found a forest, sculpture park. Isn't it called the Cass Sculpture Park?
Yes, sculpture.
And she said, you're going to do it there. And she was going to have 100 kids from schools around Sussex rather, and they were going to make this play out in the open, and it was going to be one of those shows where you follow it round, a promenade show, which I'd never been. So I thought, it's promenade, it's outside, it's mad. And there's 100 children. Either this woman is off a rocker, and anyway, it won't happen, or it'll be dreadful. But I was more and more convinced once I'd met her and met the people at Chichester that they were so serious and professional and knew what they were doing. I thought this is going to be interesting. But I have to say that I turned up coming to see it as a youth production. So my expectation was not the same as going to the Old Vic or the Young Vic or something. It was a youth production. I thought it was going to be interesting. I turned up with my wife and went to the forest, and we walked round. And we were completely enchanted, so much so that we spent another night in an extremely expensive hotel in Chichester in order to see it again the next day. It was phenomenal, quite phenomenal, the way the children were gathered, not drilled, but somehow what they managed to do was to engage each of their minds in what they were doing. And it was so utterly convincing. And they did everything. They did the puppetry. They did the butterflies, they did the fireflies, and they played all the characters, and they were just outstanding. And then it went really happily to Regent's Park, where it came out of the wide countryside, and it wasn't now a performance that you follow around. You sat down and you watched it, but it was in a wooded area, so it was like a jungle in London, with zoo noises off.
Yes.
Which was really great. I liked that a lot. And the performance was great, but now more professional, every time more professional, and gathering itself. And then this is the first time I've seen it inside, where it was always going to end up, if it was going to be any good, and it was wonderful. You people who haven't seen it yet, you are in for a treat, a real treat.
One of the things that you do so beautifully in the piece is that we have a young girl who has lost her father and then is going to lose her mother with many adults in the tsunami. But you echo it all the way through with the story of animals that are taken from their parents or their parents are shot. Now, when you started to write it, that moment when you think, now I can write my Jungle Book, I'm going to do this. Do you start with that sense of balance? How are you going to tell the animal story versus the children's story, or do you just let the characters tell you how to do it?
I try to do the latter. And if I'm ever any good at doing these things, it is when the characters take control, as you know perfectly well. You kind of stand back and let them make happen what is going to happen. If you have a preconceived notion, then the reader is always going to know where the hell you're going anyway. So I kind of try, if I can, if I've got the confidence, to let the story take its own head at some point. With this, I did have some sort of instinct, I think, that this was a tragedy. So you mustn't make something sweet and nice out of it. You must acknowledge the tragedy and then deal with how we deal with tragedy. And we all have to, at some time or another. And children know this as well as anyone else. We know perfectly well for children that they lose a grandparent, or an auntie, or an uncle, mum or dad. They might lose a beloved pet. They know about grief. We all know about grief. And this was the most grievous of times. So it seemed to me to be important to reflect that in the story. That's why I started with a death of a soldier in Iraq. And what's interesting, isn't it, is how I did that at a time when, yes, there was a debate about the Iraq War, but it's become sharper as the time has gone on, as indeed has the discussion about and debate about the planet and the way we disregard it and exploit it. It's interesting how stories grow into times. I had it with Warhorse in a way. I wrote Warhorse at a time when, generally speaking, I think a lot of people reading it, some teachers, some parents, certainly some critics, thought, well, why are you writing a story about the First World War for young people? Well, excuse me, this was a long time ago. What's the point? And then really, after 10, 20 years, you find that wars are coming into our sitting rooms, you know. We see wars going on in Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, and they're there in the corner of the sitting room. And suddenly the First World War doesn't seem so antique.
When you're watching, as you did this afternoon for the first time, seeing it here, as a writer, do you like's not quite the right word, when you are sitting in an auditorium, and trust me, everybody was weeping. It was a very odd experience. There was a lot of, because it is so very moving.
No one saw me.
What, were you weeping?
Yes.
Good. Oh, I could see you.
But no one saw. I was
sniffling away.
All the men. Have you noticed men? Actually, it's very interesting. I do watch how other men cover it up, and we're hopeless at covering it up. Women just blub. It's lovely. They can get away with it. But men, well, I'm not actually. A handkerchief comes out, and.
But it's hopeless this time of the year, because normally people, the burly men go, "Oh, it's hay fever."
Yeah, hay
really,
fever.
mate, I don't think it is.
My throat, I got a terrible cough.
Terrible cough. But as a writer, when you're sitting in the auditorium and that's happening, and it is very moving, and there are all of these things going on, do you feel a satisfaction thinking, yes, I've done my job now, and the directors and the writers, and we'll talk about all the collaborators in a moment, but does that make you feel proud of that? Can you detach yourself and see it as an artist, if you like, rather than someone crying with a bad cold?
No, I'm just a bloke crying, really. I think the truth is that it's not...
You are Hugh Grant, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm Hugh Grant. It's not yours.
No.
This play is made by this theatre and by these people. It happens to be based around a story that I wrote. But
it's another thing now.
It is another thing, and I can sit there and look at the play and feel what the play is doing. And actually, it's very interesting. There were changes this time, which a wonderful writer has made, which really worked, and they're not in the book. And that used to, when I was a younger writer, it used to annoy me. How dare they, But actually, it makes it a better play. And finally, what you understand is a play is a play, a film is a film, and a book is a book. And the great adapters and the great actors and directors know that, and they take the core of what it is that you've written and then make it into something of their own. And then you sit back and you watch this. It's nothing to do with you at all. And certainly pride doesn't come in. I love it at the end when it is clear to me that people have been deeply engaged in it. But that's not pride. It's a wonderful thing about live theatre, is that you feel what other people feel. So you're one of 1,300 people being swept along by wonderful acting, extraordinary puppetry and scenery and music and effects. And you're just one of them. And that's what's lovely. It's just losing yourself in that. And then someone comes up and spoils it by saying, would you sign my programme? And I don't mind it a bit, but really the people who should sign the programmes are the directors and the actors and the people who've made the play.
Yes. With the collaboration, you just mentioned that there's some incredibly strong performances. There's really fine acting. But there's also, of course, this thing that, in a way, you're almost responsible for in all of British theatre now, which is entirely a new form of theatre making in terms of puppetry, the wonderful Toby Ollier. Now, you, of course, mentioned Warhorse. That was a long time in the gestation. What we see on this stage are, as you said, tigers. We see an elephant, we see orangutan, we see birds, we see fish. Crocodile, the snapping of the crocodile. It is an extraordinary way to tell a story. When you first started to think about your stories being put on stage, and particularly Running Wild, which requires this mighty beast, Una, at the heart of it, what is it you think that puppetry can give in a piece of theatre that projections can't give, or somebody, pretending to be an elephant? What is it that makes it so special and so powerful?
It's such a good question. It fascinates me, really, because everyone sitting there knows perfectly well. They look at it and think, well, it's a bit of cloth, and you can see the funny old legs and the spongy rubber stuff, and it's a puppet, and you can even see the people inside it working it. And yet, these are people who these days, particularly young people, are so used with modern technology to seeing the magic of what is out there, be it nature or whatever, made absolutely as real. And suddenly what they're seeing is not real as real. In fact, what they're being allowed to do, which very often films don't let you do, is that the people who make a play like this are giving respect to the audience, of saying, here it is, you do the rest. And it's just the same, actually, as a writer. When you write a story, I write a story, and you put it in your book, and you know that someone's going to sit down there and read it, but you know that your book, it means absolutely nothing until these people imagine it, until they lose themselves in that text. And what's wonderful is to see an elephant and orangutans or whatever being wonderfully manipulated so engagingly, but everyone knowing that it's not a clever trick. It's asking you to fill in the gaps and to imagine these creatures as they are. And I love that. I loved it with Warhorse, first of all. And you said you know well enough that it was the National Theatre who decided that they would take this huge risk, 2 years in the making, of putting huge puppetry on a major stage in London and seeing if it would work. It's mad, completely mad. But they made it work because they brought the best people in theatre to it. They brought these wonderful puppeteers, designers, composers, lighting designers, directors. They just brought the best. And what's really wonderful and different is that more and more theatres are doing this for families, for young people.
Yes.
I mean, the important thing with young people for the theatre is to convert them instantly, so that they see a play and they just want to come back and see another one. And after this here, and after Wars, it's the same. They'd see it and they think, wow, isn't that amazing? And some of them will think, I'd like to make a puppet. Wouldn't it be great to make scenery? I'd love to act. And soon enough, that's the sort of thing.
And that is what imagination produces, is
course,
this different
absolutely.
thing. In a moment, I am actually going to come to the audience. So if there are any young people who think they'd like to ask Michael a question, just start thinking about it now so you don't miss your chance if you want to. But before we do that, just give everybody a chance to think about it, can I just bring round a little bit to the very, very strong, powerful message about our responsibility to look after the environment, to be knowledgeable about the consequences of what we do in, sitting here in Chichester today, the places in the world where the trees have been cut down in order to give us, I heard one young girl go out saying, if that's true, Mum, then I don't want to use toothpaste anymore. Is somebody going out here?
There's a wonderful excuse not to brush your teeth,
Absolutely.
Isn't there?
And I know that was your evil plan in all times. But in terms of that, there are some people who make a political message and that's where it comes from. With you, you take us with you on the imagination, the incredible production. By the end, we see all of the animals, we see the consequences. There's some very dark bits and some violent bits. But at the end, the message, therefore, can be heard. Now, how do you decide that balance between the message you want to get across about saving the planet, taking our responsibility seriously, and the story?
I suppose
they're not the same.
I know what you mean. I suppose it's not by having the message at the forefront of my mind when I'm writing it. I just want to tell a cracking good story. And I think with most writers, it's the same way we are concerned about whether it be society or whether it be international politics. It doesn't matter what it is. You are going to be telling stories about what it is that you believe in. And that will come through. But it mustn't be some kind of tub-thumping thing. It must be your story, which touches people emotionally and intellectually. And so that people leave the theatre thinking, not having had some sort of polemic which they have to take on board. It's important to reflect how, for me, when I write my stories, on how I see the world. That's not because I want others necessarily to see it exactly the same. I would like it if more people did, but then we're all like that. I want people to listen to the stories, and if it is just a good story, that's fine. What I do hope is that many young people will read the stories or see the plays, reflect on them, and then 2 or 3 years later will read more about it, think more about it, and then work out for themselves what it is that they think about these immensely complex issues. There's sort of one issue in this play, and in Warhorse it's the same, really. And it is... it's something I do feel very strongly about, and I think everyone in this room does as well. And that is that we are seen to be becoming an unkind species. Maybe we always have been, I don't know. But certainly in my lifetime, that unkindness, that ruthlessness, the greed that seems to be either the cause of that or is caused by it, seems to have multiplied and multiplied. And I suppose that I'd feel now that this is urgent, so that when I see a play like this, I'm sitting there thinking, yeah, that was a good thing to write about. And a good thing for children to see. They don't have to agree with it. And I think, interestingly, today there were some 4 or 5-year-olds here, really young, loving the puppets. I think probably quite mystified by the sadness, although not understanding it, so I don't think it was traumatic. They're not going to go away with great messages. They are going to go away with how wonderful that tiger was and be appalled that it's now dead. End of story. And they're not going to hear the arguments about why it was killed. They're not going to hear the arguments about why the trees were being burnt down. They will see, I suppose, the humanity of that lady at the end who looks after orangutans in the forest and tries to save them from being cooped up in cages, and how important that is.
And the idea that the kindness that human beings should and might show to animals
and one
is
another.
Repaid back.
Yes.
Because actually we learn from them as much as they learn from us. And that's so powerful in Running Wild.
I hope so. But it's important that it's set against this background of war as well, because we do it to each other. You know, that's what horrifies me, having grown up just after the Second World War, when this was all in the air, and yet again it was going to be a war to end all wars. We kind of want to believe the best. What we should be doing is struggling to make the best happen.
Well, it's a wonderful line with Geraldine, who runs the sanctuary, when she says, you know, there are the baby orangutans there, but there will always be more. But if we don't do this, there will be none. It's, you know, it's wonderful. Can we have the house lights up a little bit so we can have some questions? Now, grown-ups are allowed to ask Michael questions if they want, but I'm going to let the children do it first. And that's a very brave young person right there. Thank you.
How did you come up with the name for Running Wild?
Thank you. Great first question. How did you come up with the name for Running Wild?
I don't know.
Terrible first answer.
No, I mean, it's a really good question. The truth is, with titles, I'm not very good at. I've done some really rubbish titles. And I always have arguments with my publishers about it. I don't know. I just thought it sounded good, it looked right, felt right, and it was what we call a working title. When you're writing a book, you have a title that you start it with. Sometimes it's just X at the top of it, and on you go. In this case, I wrote down Running Wild, and it stayed Running Wild. I'm just writing a book at the moment, in which by far the best thing is the title. I haven't finished it yet. When I put the final full stop, the rest of it I have to make as good as the title. Shall I tell you the title?
Yes.
I'll do it to you privately, since you asked the question.
Oh. Well,
it's called... Are you ready? Because you're going to have to buy the book now. It's called In the Mouth of the Wolf.
Ooh.
It'll cost you £12.99, all good bookshops, in about a year's time.
Brilliant, thank you. Another question.
I like writing stories. Do you have any tips?
Writing stories. What are your tips?
Well,
thank you.
Yes, I do have some tips. I'll keep them very brief. Read a lot. My rubbish, other people's rubbish. Everyone's rubbish. Read, read, read. Read fiction. Read fiction. Read what you like. Read the back of a cornflakes packet. But read and read and read. And I say that advisedly because the more you read, the more it seems to be possible for you to find your own voice and to explore other people's ideas. That's fine. Secondly, you keep your eyes open, your ears open, your heart open. And all the time you're doing this, you live an interesting life, which means you meet people, talk to people, listen to people, go places, see things, and then make notes. Make little notes, little sketches, so you don't forget. I'm a bit lazy, but I try to write 2 or 3 lines about something every day, the most important thing that I've seen, funny thing, silly thing, sad thing, something someone said. Just write it down. 2 things happen. First of all, you don't forget, and that's more important at my age of 73 than yours. But the second thing that's really important is that one of those little things you write down can become the seed corn for another story. It just sort of, you can't stop thinking about it. And you go back to it and you read it again. Did I really hear that? Did I really see that? And that's what happened with Running Wild. It was this article in a newspaper, and it worried me and worried me. It gave me lots of pleasure and joy that this child had been saved, and I couldn't put it out of my mind. But that was one of the little things that I wrote down. And then you asked, no, it's you I'm pointing to. You're the one who asked the question. Here's the thing. Don't be too quick to try to write a great story. Do a lot of dream time. Think about it. Dream it out. And then, finally, when you do write the story, for me, this is my way of doing it. It's not the best way, I'm sure. I try not to think of myself as a writer. I tell it. I tell it down onto the page, down my arm, through my fingers onto the page. And I make all the mistakes. It doesn't matter, because you can correct the mistakes later. But what you mustn't do be thinking about your handwriting, or your spelling, or your punctuation. You put in as much punctuation, spread it all around the place. Don't worry about it. Later on, you can correct it all and make it right. Because yes, you've got to spell it right, otherwise people won't be able to understand it. Yes, you've got to put in punctuation. What was your name? Who asked the question? What was your name? Willow. Do you know, Willow, why you need a full stop at the end of a sentence?
For a pause.
Why do you need to pause? To breathe. When your teachers say put full stops, this is because they don't want you to die. It's quite simple.
Brilliant. Can we have the microphone back? And there's a young lady at the back, and then there's a young gentleman down the front.
How long did it take to write and produce Running Wild?
To write and produce, do you mean the book or the whole thing here?
The book.
I think it was a book that took a fair bit of time, because I had to do a lot of reading and thinking about it. I think I took about 6 or 9 months dreaming it up. And then I write very quickly. I would say another 3 months writing. Once I get writing, I write extraordinarily quickly. Do you remember I told you I'd tell it down? And I write by hand, really, really small, making lots of corrections. And then I've got a very nice wife and a very nice daughter who type it out and put it onto a thing called a computer. And then once it's on there, I know which buttons to press to make it better. And then it's my procedure after that. But I think I would say about probably a year or so, something like that.
Yeah, thank you. Young lady at the back, thank you.
I've always wondered how you ever thought how you've been inspired to become an author and write all these stories.
Well, I can tell you, I was a teacher in a school, a primary school. And I was trying to engage the children. These are year 6s. But at the end of the day, you struggle to hold children's attention. And I had this brilliant head teacher who encouraged all the teachers in the school, at the end of the day, to read a story to the children from 3 to half past. So I did it. And it worked really, really well. The one rule I made was only read books to them that you love yourself. And that seemed to work. And then one day I ran out of a good book to read, and I read them a book that wasn't so good, and they did what children always do, particularly year 6s. They look out the window and pick their noses, and it's horrible. And I knew I had to finish this book because my wife told me to, but then after a while I said, I can't do it, and then she said, well, make up one of your own. You're a pretty good liar. So I went in there the next day, and with that encouragement, I made up a story. Some of it prepared it the night before, some I made up as I went along. And an amazing thing happened, and it was amazing. As I was telling it, I suddenly realized I was believing the story myself. I was seeing it really clearly in what Shakespeare called my mind's eye. I was seeing it. And the more I saw it and spoke it as if I was seeing it, the more they believed it. I don't know, I'm sure you've never done this, but when I was little, once or twice I did tell lies. Have you ever told a lie? Well, you know what you have to do to tell a good lie. We all do. You have to believe it when you're telling it and don't make it too impossible. It's really quite simple. And I did that day, and they all believed. And at the end, it was wonderful. It's just wonderful. Any teachers here, by the way? Any teachers here at all? Wonderful. Do you know that wonderful moment, which is the best moment for all teachers, is when the bell goes at the end of the day? There's a wonderful feeling, and normally you're exhausted, they're exhausted. And this particular time, I was in the middle of this story, and the school bell went at 3:30. And they all said, 35, 40 little monsters said, "Oh, sir." And I thought,
Yes.
and I went on with it the next day, and I became a storyteller that way, honestly. Just keeping children quiet.
Young man in the front row.
Which book did you most enjoy writing?
Who said anything about enjoying? Do you know, I say that it's not so silly. The writing bit I find hard, really hard. I always do. It's no easier now, 100 or so books later, than it was when I wrote the first one. The bits I enjoy are the dreaming it up. I love dreaming it up. Lying there in bed at night and weaving things together, walking along country lanes, saying things out loud to sheep and see if they work. I do a lot of that, a lot of thinking it out and dreaming it up. Then the moment comes when you've got to sit down and write it. And then that's the hard bit. It's like homework. Same stuff. But then there's the really good bit at the end, when about a year later you get through the post an envelope and you open it up and there's your book. And it's got a title and it's got your name on it. And you think, "Oh, you clever thing." And what that does is it enables you to do the next one, because it gives you the confidence that you can. You know this perfectly well yourself. In whatever it is that you do and you like doing, you feel you can do it well, it encourages you to do it well the next time. So it is holding a book in my hand. I love that. The beginning and the end, the bit in the middle is rubbish.
Young lady there.
What are your feelings when you found out your books had been published?
Well, why don't I tell you about the first time, because that's the best time. I did send up a story to a publisher in London. One of the stories I was telling to the kids, the head teacher said it was so good I should write it out and show it to her. And she corrected it a bit, and then we sent it off to a publisher. And to get a letter a month or two later saying, "Dear Mr. Morpurgo, we like your story. And then, would you write 5 more? And then we will pay you £75. I just thought, it's wonderful. And it's never got better than that. Because the first time you realise you can do something, you just don't forget it. I don't know if any of you younger ones here have ever acted on a stage. And you realise it's worked. People have listened. And they seem to have enjoyed it. And you've enjoyed it. It just gives you this feeling of, I can do this stuff. And that's the best feeling in the world, to feel that you can do it. But it's never got better than that. Life's a disappointment after that.
Is there any other young person who would like to ask? Gentleman there.
Did you like writing stories when you were younger?
No, I didn't. I went to a school in London called St. Matthias in the Warwick Road in London. And this was in 48. And I had the most terrible teacher. Is she in the room? I think I'm safe. And she put me off stories, really, particularly off writing, because all the silly woman would do would be to go to the blackboard and write up one word. And then she would do this. She would go back and sit down, and she'd clap her hands. You have 45 minutes. I want you to write 2 sides on whatever she'd written on the board. Giraffe, let's say. And I'd sit there. We used to have double desks in those days. There was a girl who sat next to me who was called Belinda, with whom I was in love, who was not wonderfully beautiful, only wonderfully beautiful. She was really bright. And I would always look to her to see what she was doing. And you know one thing I learned about Belinda, which is why I fell out of love with her, was that she would always sit with her arm like this. So I could very rarely read it. But I found it so hard to write cold. And of course what this silly woman should have done was to take us to Africa. And we should have walked up to a giraffe and looked at a giraffe, watched a giraffe eating, watched a giraffe bending down over a river to drink. My goodness, I could have written 20 sides. I could not write cold. And I found it so, so hard. And then, of course, you get punished. You get detention. And then you have to stay in and write lines. And that was how I learnt not to like writing. So it took me another 10 years or 15 years to find my voice and realise that it could be a lot of fun. But she did rather put me off.
There's a young gentleman there, and then one here, and then we have a special guest that we'd like to introduce to everybody.
Why do you write so many stories that are a bit true?
Thank you.
It's so well put. That's a really well put question. They are a bit true. Why? I think this is a lack of imagination on my part. There are plenty of writers, really fine writers, who, all C.S. Lewis needed to write what he wrote was a cupboard. That's the truth of it. As soon as you walked through that cupboard, you were into Narnia, and you were imagining it. I could never do that in a million years. It's the same thing with Philip Pullman. These people who have huge, huge imaginations can imagine the worlds. Terry Pratchett was another. I couldn't do that. I need the truth of real things, whether it be the tsunami, whether it be the First World War. I need to have that. That's what grounds my stories, I suppose. That's just how I am. I wish I wasn't, because I'm not very good at enjoying fantasy stories either. So when I judge, which I have, we all have, judged prizes, very often you get a lot of fantasy novels in, and I have to put up my hands and say, I honestly, don't ask me to judge this, because I just can't go there. I never could. And I always think with C.S. Lewis, my mother always used to give me C.S. Lewis. Later on, she thought it would be really good for me. I think it was because they are very, very well written, that's for sure. But I did say to her in my 30s, I wish you'd never given me those books, because the moment I walked through the back of that cupboard, I thought it was rubbish.
Yeah. Young man there.
What was the worst book you've written?
What is the worst book you've written?
Sorry, where is this
yes,
child?
he's there. Are the parents in the house?
You are very brave and dangerously close. Okay, what's your name?
Joshua.
Sorry?
Joshua.
Joshua. Here's what you're going to have to do, Joshua. You've asked the question. What you'll have to do is to go and read them all and then decide yourself. No, the honest answer is it doesn't matter what I think. There are some books I like better than others, and there's some that I like less. The ones I really don't like, I'm not going to tell you about. They're my own private shame. Do you understand that?
Now, you've all heard a huge amount about writing. I hope there'll be lots of young people in the audience who will now go home and think that they can write these books. Michael's been so generous with his time and everything about how you work and how this play has come to life. But we have an extraordinary honour today. This is the beginning of the tour, but the very great Virginia McKenna, one of the founders of the Born Free Foundation, and the Born Free Foundation is partnering with all of this tour that is going all the way up and down the country and will be finishing in June in Wolverhampton. Virginia McKenna, I'm delighted to say, is actually here this afternoon, and we would be incredibly honoured if she might come up and say a couple of words and be with Michael, or say it from down there, wherever you would like. I know Michael wasn't sure whether you would like to come up, but ladies and gentlemen, Virginia McKenna.
Well, where to start? Just to go back to the wonderful young man who asked Michael which was the book he'd written he didn't like, or the one he liked least. I would like to answer by saying, "Dear Mr. Morpurgo, we love your books. Please write some more."
Yes.
I did see this incredible play last year in the Sculpture Garden near Chichester, and I brought 2 of my grandchildren with me. I have 4 of my grandchildren here this afternoon, sitting here, and my godson. So a lovely family collection of people are here to watch this incredible production. And what makes it very special for Born Free, which perhaps you know a little bit about, is that these animals you're going to see are in the wild. They are how the animals behave, and I promise you, 2 seconds you'll forget they are puppets. They were never puppets to me. They were always living, real creatures. They are more real, these puppets, that you will see, and I've seen before, and many of you will have seen Warhorse, than any animal that you will see in captivity, because these animals are in the wild, facing the wild's dangers, of course, and the hazards, and the jealousies, and all the feelings animals have for each other. And they eat each other too. Well, we do that as well, not wild animals particularly, but we eat animals, some of us. And so what you see here is more true to life of the real wild animal than watching any animal that you may go and see in captivity. I am so over the moon that Born Free has been chosen to be a part of this story. It is almost the heart of Born Free, really, and it's not only about the animals and how they live in nature, but the relationship with humans, the respect given by the humans in this play. We don't, as has just been said, we do live in a rather harsh, cruel world at the moment, and lots of dreadful things are happening, not only to humans, but also to animals. They're treated as merchandise, things you can buy and sell. No, that shouldn't be like that. We respect living creatures for who they are, and as individuals, that's the most important thing. Don't say a pride of lands or a herd of something. There's one, and no one is like the next. So that is the heart of this story and the heart of what we believe in Born Free. So thank you with all my heart. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And thank you to Michael Morpurgo. I'm afraid I'm going to have to let these human animals off the stage, because we need to give this stage back to the players, because there's this evening's performance. Do follow the Running Wild tour. Do join in. If you've enjoyed it, tell everybody about it. It's going to Coventry next. And of course, there's a great deal of information about the Born Free Foundation. And if you feel like everybody in the audience this afternoon, that maybe there's just something that you could do, every one person, whether you're a writer, whatever we are, every person can make a difference. So, ladies and gentlemen, Virginia McKenna and Michael Morpurgo.